So when you say programmatic media powered by data science, how does this translate into actual work for your clients?
So programmatic advertising by nature, and just by how it's set up, it's a very data heavy domain, I would say, right? So there is a lot of data that is available for you to access. Yeah, I think one of our biggest differentiators is the kind of data partnerships that we have, and how what do we really do with those data partnerships, right? So we have our flagship platform Sigma, which houses all of our intelligence. This is a great example of how we truly leverage analytics and data science to contextualize stuff for our clients. Shorter development cycles, easier access to for non-technical people are one of the biggest wins that we are seeing with AI.
Good morning. It's a lovely day, Hitesh. Thank you for joining us for this podcast of simulated reality. It's wonderful to have you here. So, how are you doing today, Hitesh?
I'm doing well, thank you, Sandeep. A very good morning to you as well. It's a pleasure to be here and to be talking to you.
Yeah, Hitesh, I'm sure this is going to be an exciting session. This is a very new industry, and I'm sure the audience would really love to understand your views on what this industry is, what does MIQ do, and what has been your career journey as a data science leader so far. So let's get started. So, Hitesh, one of the first few questions is, you could help us with your current role, with your current journey so far. So that would be a great start to this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I joined MIQ in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic. So that was interesting. Um, I joined MIQ from a company called ITC Limited. Sure you've heard about it. Most people in India have heard about it. And I was sort of like a lead for their analytics team in the foods division. Uh, and I joined MIQ as a senior manager for data science. So MIQ had a very lean data science team at the time, focused on client solutions and client needs. And I was sort of, while that team at the time was sort of siloed and distributed across our key markets, my mandate was to basically make it into a global team and lead, right, with excellence. So I started from there, and then over the years, I think over the last 4 years at MIQ, I've grown and I've like worn many other hats. I've also started to lead the development of local products across all of our core markets. And the most recent change has been that I've also started to lead all of our analytics in the JPAC region. So JPAC region for MIQ is relatively new. We are just venturing into the different Asia Pacific countries. So setting up the analytics practice, supporting the business in terms of all of their analytics need is something that falls under my purview.
So, how big is the team, Hitesh?
Overall, I think my team, everything combined, data science, local products, visualization, research, and analytics, I think it's close to 80 to 85 people.
Okay,
Uh,
very large team.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And Hitesh, I think it would also be appropriate at this juncture for the audience who may not be entirely familiar with MIQ. So, could you also start by telling us what exactly does MIQ do and where does it fit into the global digital advertising and analytics ecosystem?
Absolutely. So, MIQ is a programmatic advertising company. Programmatic advertising, in simple terms, is basically digital advertising where inventory is traded programmatically. What I mean by that is uh, all of the real estate on the internet where you show digital ads. Some of those real estate can be bought directly, some of those are bought via a real time auction process. And that process is basically called programmatic trading. So MIQ has been in this space for, I think it was started back in 2010. So we've been in the space for almost 15 years now. We are headquartered in London. All of our major businesses, we are, I think, close to present in 12 countries now, but our major businesses are in the US, Canada, UK, and Australia. MIQ made an investment in a center of excellence here in Bangalore back in 2012 or 2013, I think. And what started as a small team is now close to 400 people serving all of our engineering, analytics, and data science needs for the business right here from Bangalore.
So, when you say programmatic media powered by data science, how does this translate into actual work for your clients? Could you help us
Yeah.
with a few use cases for your clients?
Absolutely. So programmatic advertising by nature and just by how it's set up, it's a very data heavy domain, I would say, right? So there is a lot of data that is available for you to access. There's also a lot of data that you could uh, play around with so that you deliver your campaigns more efficiently. So across the life cycle of a campaign, right? Like typically before you even win a campaign, you have to do like a pre-campaign pitch with potential advertisers that if you were to entrust your campaign with me, this is how I would run it, right? This is the kind of intelligence that only I have access to. This is what I would do with that intelligence. This is how I would put into practice and optimize your campaigns in real time. So all of that happens in the pre-campaign stage. Once we've won the campaign, then we actually put that into practice. So over the years, MIQ has made significant investments in terms of building systems which are easily integrated with one another and which basically can be activated easily for any advertiser. So uh, activating a campaign or going live with a campaign is much faster, much easier. And then basically everything that happens once a campaign is live, right? So how do you optimize? How do you ensure that your KPIs keep going or keep getting better week over week? What sort of insights and analytics could you provide the advertisers and the stakeholders in the client organization so they can make their decisions more in a more informed manner? So everything is sort of taken care from here, and everything falls under the purview of what we do.
And when you say the advertisers here, the clients, the advertisers that you're talking about, they typically refer to the CPG companies, retail companies, anybody who wants to, advertise on the internet. Is that the definition?
Yeah, that is probably the definition, and I think I can very proudly say that MIQ is quite agnostic in terms of the verticals that we work with. So we have had clients in CPG, we've had clients in retail, we've had direct to consumer businesses, direct business to business advertisers as well. We work with travel and tourism clients. We work with clients that deal with gold. We work with political parties and government organizations. So yeah, I mean, digital advertising in that manner is quite agnostic. I think every vertical has some sort of a digital strategy today. Just because how proliferated the internet is. And MIQ is sort of, like has a strong foothold across all the major industries that we work with.
Sure, wonderful, Hitesh. In fact, this is a very exciting space. I'm not sure many of the audience members would be aware of this particular industry, but this seems to be quite exciting. Let's also try to understand, Hitesh, more about the local products that you are leading, local products and also data science and analytics.
Yeah.
So, what exactly do you do? What exactly do you mean by local products, and what exactly is your work in data science and analytics?
Yeah, so the whole local product work stream started with, like our constant need to be differentiated from competitors, right? So MIQ in its commercial, like our commercial model is such that we work with direct advertisers, but we also work quite a bit with some of the largest holding companies in the world, like Dentsu, Omnicom, Group M, and so on, right? Publicis. Uh, so basically, in order to nurture that relationship, in order to basically continue to position ourselves as a differentiated service provider for our direct advertisers, there is always this need of, what is it that we can do that others can't? And that is how the whole local product narrative came into the picture. So we wanted to provide intelligence, we wanted to provide optimization methods which are very, very unique to MIQ, which are a result of the investment that we've made in the Center of Excellence here in Bangalore. Not a lot of programmatic advertising companies have done that. Definitely not at the time at which MIQ did it. So we basically want that to play to our advantage. So local product in a nutshell is basically, smaller sized products which are very, very relevant to a specific market, but might not have global relevance at the moment. So there's a separate team at MIQ which is working towards building our global platform called Sigma. You must have heard about it. We had a mega launch in the summer this year. But outside of that, every local markets have their own nuances in terms of what is MIQ strength, what is not. Every local markets have their own commercial strategy around what do they want to go after. Where do they see MIQ becoming, become a major player in the coming years? And that really defines our strategy, right? So it could be something like healthcare intelligence in US, to something like a total video planning solution, maybe in the Canada and the UK. So these are things which are very, very relevant to a specific market, but may or may not always have a more global relevance.
Okay, and in terms of differentiation, I think you've already touched upon a few specific points, but could you also give me a very, very broad, high-level view of the key differentiators of MIQ versus some of your competitors and peers in this highly competitive ad tech landscape?
Yeah, I think one of our biggest differentiators is, the kind of data partnerships that we have, and what do we really do with those data partnerships, right? So we have, our flagship platform Sigma, which houses all of our intelligence endpoints. Basically, crunches close to more than a trillion data points across data partners to provide real-time actionable intelligence, very, very specific to a vertical, whether it is commerce or travel or healthcare. At the same time, very, very specific to a channel, something like connected TV or a YouTube, which are basically emerging channels in the programmatic space right now. So, the way we have built our systems, the way we work with such a massive amounts of data on a daily basis, and how do we really translate that into real actionable business recommendations is probably our biggest differentiator. Um, we've always been good at doing that, but one of the things that we wanted to improve on was how is this really consumed by our end stakeholders, whether it is our agency partners or direct advertisers. And I think through the Sigma platform, we've really covered that this year.
Okay, so let's talk very specifics about the body of work that you're doing for some of your customers. So, if you were to explain to me your body of work, maybe through a couple of examples, how have
Yeah.
you worked with some customers? Maybe if you could just give some real use cases, some real examples, along with outcomes, that
Yeah.
would be a great thing for the audience to understand.
Yeah, so MIQ's value proposition is quite simple. An advertiser basically has budget to run a particular digital campaign. And MIQ's value proposition is that, we will probably run that campaign for you in the most efficient manner.
Sure.
Typically, that's followed by the question that how would you do it, and that is where the whole narrative of all of our data partnerships and the number of data points that we crunch on a daily basis to give us actionable intelligence and everything. Everything basically plays a role. But to explain this to you with an example, let me take a case study. I think we won quite a few awards for this piece of work that we did for an Indian client
Mhm.
last year. So basically, this was a client who sells inverters. Like this is an inverter company, and they wanted to run like inverter is not a very high engagement category, right? As you would notice, it's very need based, uh, and people who want to buy an inverter usually take that decision based out of a need and not it's not something that which you would buy impulsively, right? So the idea was to how can like the ask rather was how can we make this campaign much more relevant and engaging for our for our audiences, so that it leads to a positive uplift in the KPI as well. And inverter is also something that a lot of people would buy offline rather than online. So one of the very unique things that we did for this particular campaign is, we said that how can we target people in the moment, right? In a moment where they feel the need for the inverter the most. So we started to look for and every tactic and every strategy at MIQ is basically implemented using data. And using that same principle, we started to look at, okay, how can I find power cuts data that happens across India and at what granularity can I find it? And then there is an app called Urja Mitra from where basically, this data is freely, readily available. So our engineers quickly built a pipeline of pulling this data into our data systems. And what we started to do was whenever there was a scheduled power cut, whenever there was unscheduled power cut, as soon as it was updated in this database, we would immediately serve programmatic ads to audiences in that particular zip code.
Okay.
And this was very, very in the moment that, hey, we know that you have a power cut right now. This is why you need XYZ inverters. And this is the closest store from where you can buy it. right? So there is this dynamic creative optimization that happened. There was this real time in moment targeting that happened. And that basically, we saw like a multifold increase in all of our KPIs across the funnel, right? Right from campaign engagement to actual conversions and buys that happened. So, and this is not a one-time activity. It's not like, today I looked at that data and I saw that, okay, I will serve ads from 3 to 4 p.m. I'll serve ads from 6 to 7 p.m. Power cuts can happen at any time. So we set up an automated system in such a way that would automatically ingest this data, which will automatically identify zip codes where this power cut is happening, and focus on more delivery of impressions in those particular areas. And areas where power cut is not happening, we would deliver lesser impressions, right? Because it's not as relevant in that particular moment. So uh, this is a great example of how we truly leverage analytics and data science to contextualize stuff for our clients. Like this is something which might not be a great fit for every client, right? So this is a solution which was built very, very specifically for this particular client. Similarly, we've had custom syncs, like campaign delivery, which is synced to the prices of gold, campaign delivery, which is synced to the prices of fuel, right? We've had a few EV clients in Canada and in US. So, how do I serve more EV ads whenever the fuel price goes up or goes down? So yeah, I think this is truly our strength in terms of how do we contextualize a particular campaign, and then we obviously have the engineering and analytics know-how to put that system into place such that it can run in an automated manner, and this is how we deliver the best outcomes for all of our advertisers.
This is actually fairly interesting because in a general scenario, any programmatic media company would have given examples of e-commerce companies or CPG companies or retailers.
Yeah.
You have actually taken a slightly different route here. You've given examples of EV companies, you've given examples of energy companies. Let me still ask you, specific use case or maybe a customer case study in the traditional e-commerce, retail or CPG industry vertical for you.
Yeah, so the e-commerce, I think most of the established e-commerce today, they have quite a few of, like they have quite advanced systems set up in-house as well, right? Like fundamentally, they sit on very, very rich first-party data that they don't share with anyone. They leverage that first-party data and they monetize it in terms of ads that they run within the platform and also ads that they run outside. So like we've done quite a lot of work with e-commerce clients, specifically in the area of new launches, right? So there is a new phone being launched, or there is a festive season coming up, and there are basically a lot of these e-commerce companies are now in-housing a lot of their brands. So one direct strategy is to, how can I leverage my own database and, like target all category buyers. But that strategy may or may not always work. Uh, a very pointed brief that comes to us is, how can I conquest more customers outside? Like, how can I find intenders or people who are visiting these, like showing interest in this particular category outside of this e-commerce platform? The e-commerce platforms have very limited intelligence in terms of what do the audiences do when they are not on their e-commerce platform. And that is where MIQ, like positions itself as a partner. So sometimes we would ingest their first party data and we would enrich it with all of their open web and offline behavior.
Okay.
Sometimes we would not really look at their first party data, but identify high propensity audiences and build lookalikes just based off the behavior that they are exhibiting outside of that e-commerce platform. So MIQ subscribes to a lot of log level impressions delivery data. So we know users, what sort of websites are they browsing. We have access to a lot of mobility data and apography data. So we know what are their interests based on the apps that they have installed in their phone, what are their locations that you would like to visit. Obviously, all of this is happening in a privacy compliant manner. Like the partners share this data with us in a masked manner, and then we have our own minimization protocol. So there are 3 or 4 layers of encryption that happens from an actual user ID to what analysts and data scientists see when they work on that data. But like coming back to what we typically do for e-commerce clients, Another example was very recently there was a launch of a phone. So e-commerce companies now have exclusive partnership with these phone companies, right? A particular phone or a particular model of a phone which just launched with that e-commerce platform
Got it.
exclusively. So what can MIQ do to to run that campaign? And one of the things that we did was we implemented a demand sync solution that basically means at multiple granularities of geography and at different time slots of the day, we look at what is the demand of a particular product or a category just by looking at the search trends for that particular category, right? So let's say I think we are both in Bangalore. Let's say Koramangala is an area which is suddenly seeing an uptick in the searches of mobile phones from let's say 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. in the night. So at that time, I will deliver more and more impressions for this new phone that is being launched. So again, a great example of in-moment marketing, a great example of being hyper relevant and hyper personalized to people who are, interested in the category, and that automatically drives great outcomes for us.
This is actually quite wonderful. And also equally wonderful is the role of analytics and AI in this entire, outcomes that you drive for your clients. So let's look at the very specifics, mechanics of how analytics and AI actually helps in driving some of these, wonderful use cases. So I think MIQ's advanced media intelligence, some custom measurement frameworks, all of these are actually quite important. I think there's a clean room analytics capability also that MIQ has developed over the last few years. So please help us understand some specific capabilities in the area of analytics and AI that MIQ has that actually helps you in delivering some of these solutions.
Sure, yeah. I think up until this point, I've covered quite a bit of, how do we leverage analytics and data science for planning and activation of a campaign or optimization of a campaign. Let me talk about measurement a little bit, right?
Sure.
Measurement is increasingly becoming a very important factor in the life cycle of a programmatic campaign. Historically, you ran a campaign, you reported on the campaign, you showed, like this is how your KPIs performed. Then you would show some cuts of the data where this KPI was over indexed. You would show some cuts of the data where this KPI was under indexed, and that used to be everything that you would deliver. But now increasingly clients are getting more and more focused towards how is any of my marketing activity moving the bottom funnel, right? Or translating into actual sales or profit for me. And that basically means all of your measurement models also need to be revamped. So we've had like a bunch of measurement studies and measurement proprietary models that we've built, which will basically like close the gap between an upper funnel activity, which is like something like seeing an ad, to a lower funnel sale. To maybe, to give a relatable example, I might see an ad of let's say an Indigo Airlines to book a flight, and then I might end up booking a flight tomorrow. Now, from seeing this ad to actually booking that flight tomorrow, there are multiple points at which I've been touched, either by the category or by the advertiser, or there have been some personal situation at my own end, which has basically led me to that booking. So, historically, marketers would just look at, okay, I delivered an ad today, you booked it tomorrow, so there is a direct attribution, but that is not how it works anymore. It's not that straightforward. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to build models which will basically assign attribution to every touch point on the path to conversion, right? And then the way we look at it is, let's say you showed a display ad on a website, then you showed a YouTube ad, then you showed a CTV ad. If one of these three things were missing, how much would the probability of a person converting would go down by? Right? And what are the roles these all these three channels are playing in like in a combination for for you to get the conversions that you need. So we've built measurement models which are which are very very channel specific. So I could give ROAS at a channel level. We've built measurement models which are geography wise granular. So I could tell you ROAS of a particular channel in Bangalore is different from ROAS of a particular channel in Mumbai, or like a tier one city versus a tier two city or a rural place, things like that. And that usually is combined with a recommendation, right? So I've given you a measurement model. I've told you what's working for you, what's not working for you. what works in a combination, what works individually, and then based off all of this understanding, how should you spend your next 100 rupees or the next whatever, the next crore rupees that you want to spend on advertising. So that's a big area of development, and we made great strides in that area in 2024. Outside of measurement, yeah, let me quickly talk about clean room analytics as well. So our clean room capability was primarily built to ingest first party data from clients in a privacy compliant manner. So the way we have built it is, let's say you are an advertiser or you are the owner of a business, so you obviously are the owner of the data. Our technology is built in such a way that you could ingest your first party data into our clean rooms without us having to touch it. Like, you have an interface where you can upload, you can select the columns that you want to mask or encrypt, and that data will basically be stored. And then basically you can also define the retention strategy. So while uploading, you could say that, I want this data to be deleted in the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. And all of this is basically coded in. And once the data is in the clean room, we bring in all of our other partnerships into that same clean room. We do all of our analytics that needs to be done. We push audiences for activation, or we will build measurement models. And as soon as this use case is done, this data will automatically get purged from the system. So, like we are in an era where data privacy and, the right usage of data is increasingly becoming a concern. And our technology that we've built in this space basically ends up giving a lot of confidence to our clients in terms of that their data is in the right hands and it's being used the right way.
Okay, this is actually quite wonderful, Hitesh, because you've covered the entire spectrum of how analytics and AI is used, right from planning to execution, optimization, measurement, frameworks, and so on and so forth. You've also touched upon clean room analytics, which is actually quite important in today's world. If you don't have clean data to work on, I think the output of all these campaigns will not be that great. So I think all of this is wonderful. Do you really feel that in the era of Gen AI, agentic AI now that people are talking about, you can extend some of these advanced analytics capabilities that are already there? So can we look at a space in which the ad tech entire industry segment is moving from typical optimization, hyper personalization to autonomous decisioning for your clients?
Yeah, I think definitely what has happened over the last 1.5 years is uh, things have become more accessible. When I say things, essentially mean proprietary models and capabilities and solutions that would have longer development cycles, that would have longer testing cycles, and would have a lot of reliance on specialists, to develop and maintain and to run those models or solutions for our clients. Like, these things have become much more easier now. They, like, one of the biggest or one of the earliest wins of the agentic systems is like these things have become much more accessible to a business user, who has very limited understanding of the tech. But you could interact with these systems in a business language, and they could translate it into an analytics model or an analytics solution, and basically get you that output. So that, I would say that is an area where we are making or where we are moving the fastest. And that basically, like, that's true for everybody, right? So uh, at MIQ, if I build a solution today, it's much more easier and faster for me to test it across clients, to talk to our commercial stakeholders around how would this really add value. It's much more easier for our commercial stakeholders to put it in front of clients that this is something that we've built. This is how you access it. So that definitely is an area where we are making progress. I think just in terms of making the models more sophisticated, making the models more richer in terms of what you do. This has been going on for a while. It's not a very recent development. I think every year we've had some advances happening in the space of AI, not specifically LLMs or generative AI, but AI in general has been evolving, right? We move from basic classification to neural net models. So models have been getting better over the years, and that, I guess, will continue to happen. Again, what is happening is the development cycles or these upgradation cycles are becoming shorter and shorter. it's becoming increasingly easier to iterate over models, to basically, this phrase of fail fast and build fast is actually, becoming quite true and practical in the current scenario. So that's the space where I see, AI having the most impact. And this may or may not be necessarily true for programmatic advertising. I guess this is in some ways true for every industry. But there are specific niches within the programmatic advertising as well where AI is playing a big role. One big area is obviously creatives, right? So historically, advertisers have had separate agencies that would build creatives. Creatives were built in a more traditional manner. Now AI models are, so advanced that these creatives can very easily be replicated, can be built with very simple prompts by anybody. And at the same time, you can build integrated systems where you can very quickly test a creative with a small set of audiences, whether it works or it doesn't work, and then move on. So that's a very, very programmatic advertising or a digital advertising example. But in general, I guess, like my answer would be shorter development cycles, easier access to for non-technical people are one of the biggest wins that we are seeing with AI.
Great. So also Hitesh, as a general industry data analytics and AI leader, you already touched upon some key trends that are there in the agentic AI space. I think you rightfully mentioned all of these key trends. But do you really see that organizations will actually adopt, agentic AI in a mainstream fashion over the next 12 to 18 years? Are you already seeing some kind of offshoots in maybe some industries, maybe in your own industry, or maybe in some other industries?
100%. I think it's definitely happening already, and it'll just continue to happen more and more. Uh, Everybody goes about it in a different manner, right? So some companies have started to implement it for their internal processes, right? How can I make HR policies more accessible to people, or how can I, like how can I make announcements about the companies in a much more on-demand manner. Some companies are leveraging it for learning and development purposes. Like how can I build contextualized courses for the work that we do within our company, where generalized online courses don't really help. Some companies, especially in the financial industries, I'm seeing are using AI more and more for their understanding of regulatory compliance, for their, let's just so that they can ingest data faster and make decisions about investments and hedges and stuff in real time. So everybody is looking at it in a different manner, but everybody is very consistently widening the scope of how they are leveraging AI, right? So I, as a company, might look at it as something that will help me. Maybe I started it as an internal chatbot for people to understand the policies better, but now I'm moving towards can I leverage AI to evaluate my vendors and help my procurement teams better? And from then on, I'm moving towards can I leverage AI to build actual models which will help me deliver my campaigns better, right? From then on, can I leverage AI to build a faster product so that I can beat competition to it and to basically build, like a very unique differentiated data offering in the market. So, yes, 100% it's here to stay. It's getting adopted across work streams, internal and external. It's already happening. I think some of the early adopters have naturally been the tech companies, or companies who are tech first or tech enabled. MIQ proudly is one of those companies. But increasingly, you see more and more traditional companies also, joining in on this and basically leverage it to maximize whatever it is that they do.
Oh, wonderful. I completely agree with you, Hitesh. In fact, I'm also seeing adoption of agentic AI rising in a lot of industry verticals. And in fact, your industry vertical is very data heavy. It is reliant upon analytics and AI solutions heavily. So I think your industry vertical is definitely a prime candidate for mainstream adoption over the next 3 to 5 years for sure. But let's talk about the programmatic media industry a little bit more. I think we've
Yeah.
all touched upon how analytics and AI is being used. What are some customer use cases? I'm sure, Hitesh, on a day-to-day basis, I think there must be several challenges that you must be facing while working on client projects. So this
Yeah.
industry is very, very peculiar, very unique. So,
Yeah.
what kind of challenges do you face while working on customer projects which are very peculiar to your industry?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think things that pop right into my head are like one of the perils of working with a very data heavy vertical or a data heavy domain is it gets harder and harder to determine what relationship is a valid relationship and what relationship or what correlation is a spurious correlation. So like that's one of the challenges that we have to deal with, right? I mean, when you have a multi-dimensional data set. For a multi-KPI campaign, there are multiple perspectives and views from which you can see this data, right? But not every view or not every perspective would be very, very relevant to an advertiser. So how do how do you understand what is a thread that you need to pull? What is a thread that will basically not lead to anything, and eventually get to a story that becomes much more relevant to a client, right? Talking more specifically, I think there continue to there are continuing challenges in terms of bringing data together, right? Not every data set is easily harmonizable. Just basis the granularity at which they exist, the refresh frequencies at which they exist, the rate of variation and change. A lot of the things might seem very, very straightforward, but are not always straightforward. There are inherent biases in the data. There are inherent oversamples and undersamples of a few classes that you would notice from time to time, and that have a risk of basically fitting a wrong model or arriving at a wrong conclusion. So challenge is not how do you work with this. The challenge is identifying these biases and these imbalances in the data set that continue to happen. In the programmatic advertising space, more and more players are moving towards walled gardens. What basically walled garden, the definition of a walled garden is you cannot get data out of that environment, right? If you want to query that data set, you have to go into that environment, do whatever analytics that you want to do, and then get your recommendations and get out. But very, very rarely you would see an individual data set being strong enough to give you a good recommendation, right? So you need an environment, and that also basically brings me back to that point of clean room analytics. You need an environment where you can bring multiple data sets in a privacy compliant manner, do your analytics, and then push recommendations out. But this is also getting increasingly difficult with, the likes of Google and Meta have their own clean rooms. And they have very strong restrictions in terms of what kind of data do can you bring into that clean room. You obviously can't get anything out of the clean room. So, like in an environment like this, how do you still ensure that analytics is still connected and relevant even without, even not being able to fully join or connect the data sets. I think these are some very common challenges that we see. uh, there are a few challenges on the measurement side as well. You run campaigns. Sometimes you can track a journey of a person from the first impression to a final conversion. Sometimes you can't, right? You don't have access to all of the data. In that case, how can you leverage data science and AI to probabilistic build a dotted path, right? Which is very, very likely that the customer or or an audience member would have followed, as opposed to having a deterministic data point. Yeah, I think these are challenges that continue to be there. I guess I would say we are much better placed at handling these challenges this year as opposed to probably we were last year. I think that also, to a very large extent, is attributed to the advancements that we made in AI. But yeah, I mean, still not fully solved.
No, I completely agree with you, Hitesh. In fact, the challenges around the measurement area, I think they are very, very unique to your industry because getting actual factual data around conversions, it's very, very difficult. There are a lot of causal relationships that could actually lead to conversion or non-conversion. So those are very, very unique challenges to your industry. So wonderful. Okay, so let's take a fun segment here, Ritesh. So let's do a rapid fire. So as an industry leader, as an industry veteran working in the analytics and AI space, I'll ask you some quick questions, and you'll have to answer, rather spontaneously. So the first question is, what will AI replace?
Uh, I think AI will replace the mundane work streams, very, very basic support functions. Uh, a simple example could be data entry applications, or basically, pushing reports from stage A to stage B, or doing basic QCs and checks. Like that is the first thing that AI would replace. And then over the years, it'll start to coexist with a few other advanced work streams. I don't think it has the capability, or probably will ever have a capability, to replace a very specialist work stream. But like a big part of our workplace today is a very simple mechanical work stream, which definitely would get replaced.
So I think that is a clear recommendation from your side. Maybe then we should all we all strive to be becoming specialists in our own fields. I think a lot of our work will get automated, and we are seeing that across a lot of industries, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think one is become specialist, and second is get domain expertise, right? So, like there are data scientists, but there are certain data scientists who understand data science and, let's say, programmatic advertising. Similarly, there are certain data scientists who understand data science and how does it really apply to the retail industry.
Sure,
And that domain perspective becomes even more important.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so wonderful. So the next question in the rapid fire segment is, what according to you is the most overrated buzzword in 2025 in the analytics and AI space?
Uh, Yeah, I think might be a controversial answer, but in my opinion, it's agentic,
Mhm.
right? I think I have noticed it time and again. People confuse agentic with autonomous or automations. Not everything automated is an agent. And that is, I mean, I'm sure with time people will understand that differentiation, but I guess it's a highly abused phrase for this year.
So, Hitesh, on that note, I think many organizations, many professionals also need to make a differentiation between traditional AI agents and multi-agentic kind of, solutions. Do you
Yeah.
think organizations are really understanding the difference right now, or there's a lot of confusion because of this?
There is definitely a lot of confusion. Again, I would go back to that point of early adopters versus late adopters, right? For the lack of a better phrase. I think some organizations have naturally gone through that cycle of confusion and have now emerged in clarity as to, what is a multi-agent application? What does like an agent in itself is not an application, right? So people need to go through that journey to understand, or to arrive at that conclusion. Yeah, like some companies have gone through it and now understand it very, very clearly. Some companies are going through that journey. I would say it's not bad to go through that journey itself, right? Because it in itself can be quite like it'll help you learn quite a bit in terms of how do you go about these things. But it is a little confusing right now for most people. My ex-colleagues, some of my ex-managers who are not always like who are not the most technical people but are more business experts, and they feel anything can be an agent, right? Any kind of an automation can be an agent. And then what ends up happening in some cases are people end up building like a bunch of siloed smaller agents and then struggle to bring it all under one application, right? And that also leads to challenges with user experience and challenges with adoption across these agents. So yeah, it's there. It'll get better, but everybody has to go through that journey, in my opinion.
So agentic is the most overhyped word in this AI space right now. What's the most overlooked or underrated capability or word in the analytics and AI space right now?
Um, I would say deployments and AI ops to a certain extent.
Okay.
Right. I think when we built machine learning models at scale, right? And we saw this massive adoption of MLOps framework. Now AI companies or AI applications in general are not really reached that level of adoption in most cases, but in some cases they have. But what I see happening is once this starts, like once you've established a stable agentic AI application, the scale will rise very, very rapidly, right? And I feel like not enough efforts are being put towards how do you deal with that scale, right? How do you put practices in place so that your AI models get better, you ensure quality, you ensure you ensure you track deviation in outputs, and you also ensure that it's deployed in such an infrastructure that it can support an exponential rise in the number of users that it is serving. It's not fully overlooked, but just by the nature of where we are in this evolution of AI applications, we've not really reached that phase where we've started to think about these things, and I think we should.
And what do you think about the overall governance, security, privacy, all of those aspects with regards to Gen AI or now agentic AI? I think
Yeah, so
when these systems scale, we'll also face similar challenges around these areas, don't you think?
100%. And this probably my like this is probably my number two item of things that are being, not being looked at in a lot more detail today. Uh, it's easier for a person to imagine, okay, I upload a Excel file and quickly summarize this for me. But a lot of people are understanding the implications behind that action, right? If you are an enterprise user or if you are a licensed user, maybe that data is private and it's not being leveraged by the LLMs to get better. But not everybody is an enterprise user, right? And because these applications are now so generally available on open web, organizations need to put a solution in place. Like how can an organization of 1,000 people, let's say a consulting company which has 1,000 consultants, ensure that one of their consultants does not end up putting a client data sheet onto an LLM model just to do their work faster. And I'm not sure if there's a direct or straightforward solution to this, but this is a real concern, right? Because escalations start like that, and basically translate into mega million penalties for companies across the world. So it's definitely something, just by looking at the cost to benefit ratio, it's definitely something that I feel organizations should put in a lot more effort, to put regulatory checks in place, to put the right processes and balances in place, and to put penalty structures in place as well, right? So that everybody knows what is the right way of usage. How do you deal with data which is yours or which is your clients, and then how do you leverage the recommendations that you get out of it?
Wonderful. So, Hitesh, thank you so much for this rapid fire segment. You are an industry veteran, and in fact, at MIQ as well, you've actually built and scaled data analytics and AI team over the last few years. So, let me ask you this. In fact, this is a very tempting question. We would definitely want to understand the key challenges that you have faced in scaling this team to where it is today, and what are some of the best practices that all of us can learn from you on how to scale the analytics and AI teams.
Yeah, obviously it's been a journey. It's not been an easy one. Uh, and we face challenges across the board, right? I guess when you turn a team which is sort of decentralized to a more centralized function, one of the earliest challenges is to how do you bring a common vision, right? That will apply to the whole team, but also will apply to individual markets that this team supports. So it starts from there. And this is not a vision or a charter that you build internally for your own team, but this is also something that you would build for your executive leadership, also for your end stakeholders and consumers of the product that you will build. Right. So that in itself is a journey. It's not always very easy and straightforward from being very, very task oriented to being very vision oriented. Uh, but once you cross that hurdle, then comes the point of actually delivering things that you've promised or the vision that you have shown to people. And like as you go from 5 to 80 people, there are obviously challenges when it comes to hiring. India as a market has grown quite rapidly over the last 2 years. And with that, basically come, hiring challenges, retention challenges, uh, talent in the experience band of let's say 2 to 5 years is very, very sought after at the moment. And it becomes increasingly difficult to retain this talent or to retain the institutional knowledge that they've acquired, right? And while while attrition fluctuates, recruitment cycles have not really gone down. That continues to be, there is a minimum threshold turnaround time that continues to be there, and that also is probably a challenge. In terms of delivery, right? So, when you start a team like this, your focus initially is very much towards building quick POCs, right? Getting quick wins, showing good proof of concepts, and making a case as to how can this be deployed at scale. And then comes the actual deployment. And because this team did not exist, this function did not exist, we have not done it in this environment before. So that also comes with its own learning curve, right? You need specialists for deploying. Like, you up until this point, you had data scientists who would build models, but now you realize you need ML engineers, right? You need data engineers, yeah, you need network engineers, and so on. So you need to basically, expand your talent portfolio. You need to define very, very differentiated roles and responsibilities for every person within that team. And then you need to start building these applications at scale. As your models get deployed, you then suddenly realize, now I need a front end application, right? So now you need front end engineers as well, and that in itself, is a very wide area. As you hit scale, you realize you need an architect to architect this better. You need data management teams to build monitoring and tracking systems for upstream data sets so that downstream workflows don't fail. So what I'm trying to say is, the scope of your work goes on increasing as you get more and more mature and more sophisticated in terms of what you're trying to deliver. At the same time, the technology in itself is changing, right? So you've built a model, you probably took a quarter to deploy that model, and then you realize that modeling technique has become a little outdated. Now there are existing newer libraries, newer packages that can give this to you in a much more accurate manner, so that the whole model goes through another redevelopment cycle. So yeah, I might sound like a person who's probably complaining a lot, but these are things that have come out of experiences. Not all challenges are bad. I think these challenges have helped me grow as a professional to a very large extent. Up until this point, like prior to building this team at MIQ, I was purely a data scientist. My job was to look at data, build models, build recommendations out of those models, make presentation to the client, and that was about it. And then refresh those models at certain frequencies. But now, I was put into situations where I had to think about connected systems, user experiences, load times for visualization, support teams and support structure, right? If something is not working, how do you troubleshoot? How can users reach out to support teams? How do you define SLAs for those support teams? And basically ways of working and things like that. So these are challenges that one will go through. Obviously, as the industry is evolving, you have more and more resources now available that can guide you through these challenges. But some of these are also good for your own professional growth, is what I would say.
Wonderful. And Hitesh, along this journey where you have tackled all of these challenges, uh, I think attrition, talent attraction, attrition, and talent retention, that is a major issue which the entire Indian IT industry and the entire industry is facing right now. Were there any specific initiatives or programs that are run internally at MIQ that you could highlight for tackling some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think there are like a bunch of programs that we have running for, like for first-time managers or for experienced managers as well. How do you lead teams that are engaged? How do you lead teams that are motivated? How do you identify a person who is disengaged or who's probably not so happy? We are constantly thinking about putting processes and frameworks in place where we can enable cross department, cross market movement of resources based on their own career aspirations. We are constantly trying to upskill people. Like, one of the things that we realized keeps an individual interested is if they continue to learn new things, right? If they feel like whatever they are doing in this organization is obviously contributing to the success of the organization, but also helping them grow as an individual or as a professional, That's a big motivation factor that builds a lot of stickiness. So how do you ensure programs like that exist? Like not all of those programs might be very, very relevant to you as an organization, right? So how do you trade off? How do you ensure that some things a person learns will lead to a direct benefit to an organization, and some things that a person learns may or may not benefit the organization, but would definitely be a great factor for their own career aspirations and so on. So these things are definitely, they happen in a continuous manner. The other aspect of this is, we are training our people more and more to become like, how do you plan for successors? How do you build that second level of leadership so that, business continuity is not impacted as it would be in the olden days. So succession planning, identifying people with a higher potential to grow versus people who will probably not grow so much. How do you differentiate in terms of your rewards and recognition, so that you retain your top talent? So all of these are programs that run in individual capacities across levels within the organization.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So, Hitesh, we come now to the last leg of this particular podcast. Let's quickly discuss the future of analytics AI in your industry. And as an industry veteran, I'll also take your inputs on what is your advice to the young professionals and data scientists. Let us first talk about the overall industry and
Yeah.
MIQ's innovation. So, what do you think are the key trends that will shape this industry over the next 3 to 5 years? And what's next for MIQ's innovation?
I think two, three different areas. One, I already touched upon briefly earlier in our conversation. Analytics will become faster and more accessible in terms of endpoints, in terms of how do you really interact with the system. Uh, SQL queries will no longer be needed. I think you could just ask a question. That's already happening today, right? You could ask a question, either you can type that question or you can ask that question verbally and you can get a response. So that's something that will definitely happen. That's something that will happen across the industry, in the programmatic advertising industry as well. The other aspect is bringing multiple data sets together. Like it's one of the challenges that I mentioned, right? That not all data is harmonizable easily. They are not at the same level of granularity. They are not at the same level of temporal frequency. But AI is making that much easier to do than today. You no longer have to join a data set. You can just ask a question pertaining to two data sets, and the AI model will automatically join and get that response for you. Um, there will definitely be a lot more effort put in terms of compute powers and in terms of making systems faster. While, like the AI applications of today are good at building POCs or uh, quick demo wireframes and things like that, they are not as good as at building enterprise grade level applications. But I have no doubt in my mind that would change very soon. At the pace at which we are making advancements here, that will change very, very quickly. uh, I think building models will become like, this whole concept of a technical specialist will get a little diluted. And that also, cues into the your other question as to what advice would I give to the individuals of today is one, like get more interested in the domain that you're working in. If you're a person working for a bank, get more interested and get a better understanding of how banks work, like how the analytics or the data science that you are applications that you're building for the bank, how is it really helping the bank in a banking operation, becomes much more important to learn, because then your ideas will also be rooted around that core fundamental business objective that you're trying to solve. Similarly for retail and for advertising and basically for every domain. Second, I think because building models has become so much easier, writing code has become so much easier, I'm noticing increasingly that people have stopped focusing a lot on fundamentals, right? Like as I was growing in my career, one of the first things that I learned was when you build a model, there's a lot of steps that go into selecting what features we want to put into a model, right? Let's say there are 15 features, and there are a lot of exploratory analysis that you would do to identify that only these eight are relevant. The other seven don't add a lot of value. What people do today is they'll put all 15, they'll quickly build the model, and then they realize the five or six are not adding a lot of value. And they go through that iterations, like multiple iterations. Just because it has become faster to iterate, people go through a lot of iterations, and sometimes you overlook spurious correlations, right? Something might be very, very correlated, but there is no causal relationship that can be built. So that's an example of how fundamentals are getting overlooked today. So I would recommend don't do that. Use AI to build your applications, but use AI to follow the traditional steps of building a model or building an application that we've had, in the past. Those have served us well. Those would probably be my two biggest recommendations, right? Like, stay focused on fundamentals of whatever it is that you're doing, whether it is front-end application development, back-end application development, data science, analytics, visualizations. And second is get more connected with the domain or the vertical in which you're working.
Wonderful, Hitesh. In fact, that's what we have done today. We have gotten more connected to your industry vertical, your domain. So, in fact, we have touched upon a lot of points. We have looked at the key trends in the programmatic advertising space. We have looked at how analytics and AI can actually help different activities, different functions. We have talked a lot about some use cases, actual body of work that you do for a lot of clients, and very, very interesting ones. And obviously, your advice to all the young professionals and budding data scientists is invaluable. So, this has been a very rich conversation, Hitesh. Thank you so much for taking out time. I'm sure the audience would really love this conversation and also get to know a lot about the overall industry and the field of data science and AI. So, thank you so much,
Yes.
Hitesh. It has been a pleasure talking to you.
It has been a pleasure for me as well, Sandeep. Thank you so much for you taking the time as well. I love the questions that you had, very, very pointed, very specific to the industry and to data science in general. And I hope people see some value in what we've discussed today and it helps somebody. But thank you for the opportunity. It was very nice talking to you.
Wonderful, Hitesh. Thank you so much. Have a nice day ahead.
You too, Sandeep.